Surprisingly, over 90% of viewers haven't subscribed yet. If you're enjoying the content, hit that subscribe button. It motivates us to keep creating and helps us never miss an upload, and you'll never miss a story again. I never thought that the quiet, predictable life we built together would one day come crumbling down. But then again, you can never prepare for betrayal, not when it comes from someone you trust the most. I always believed in love, in the small, tender moments of life. I thought I was doing everything right by her. I worked hard to provide, to care for her, and to build a future we could both be proud of. But somewhere along the way, I guess, I lost her. When we first met, she was full of energy and ambition, always reaching for something more. I admired that about her. She was always so driven, so sure of what she wanted. I was content to support her, always happy in my role as her partner. We didn't need the world's attention, didn't need extravagant parties or flashy trips. We had each other, and to me, that was everything. At first, she loved the simplicity of our life. She'd always tell me how refreshing it was to have someone so grounded by her side. I took pride in being that person, the calm in her storm. But over time, I noticed things changing. There were subtle shifts, a growing distance between us. I didn't think much of it at first. Life gets busy after all, and I wasn't blind to the demands of her career. She was climbing up the ladder at her company, and I was proud of her for it. But then, something strange happened. She started working late more often. I'd wait for her at home, wondering where she was, what she was doing. She said it was all part of the grind, the long hours necessary to make it in her field. I believed her. I had to. I didn't want to question her. Why would I? She was my wife, the woman I had vowed to cherish for better or for worse. Then came the night that changed everything. I came home early from work one evening to find her in a heated conversation on the phone. I couldn't make out the words, but I could hear the tone, intense, flirtatious. It didn't sit right with me, but I brushed it off, telling myself that I was being paranoid. That night, she came home late, her eyes wide with a strange kind of excitement. I asked her about the call, but she dismissed it with a smile, saying it was just work. She was just doing her job after all. But deep down, something didn't feel right. It was the little things. The way she seemed distracted during dinner, the way she spent more time on her phone, the way she no longer wanted to talk about her day. It was like I was living with a stranger, and the more I tried to connect with her, the more she pulled away. I decided to give her space, thinking it was just a phase. She was under pressure at work, and I was being too sensitive. But the changes kept piling up. Eventually, the truth came crashing down on me. She wasn't just busy at work, she was seeing someone else. I found out the hard way, as all devastating truths tend to come to light. I wasn't looking for it. I didn't want to find it. But the signs were there. The little clues that I had overlooked were suddenly glaringly obvious. One day I found a message on her phone. Just one, but it was enough. The words were clear, unmistakable. She was having an affair with her boss, a married man. The one she had always spoken so highly of, the one who had mentored her. The same man she'd confided in about her career, the one she said was like a brother to her. It made me sick to my stomach. All those late nights, all the excuses, it all made sense now. She had been lying to me. I couldn't breathe. The weight of the betrayal hit me like a wave, crashing over me, suffocating me. But I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I simply stood there, numb, staring at the phone in my hand. In that moment, I didn't know what to feel. Anger? Hurt? Betrayal? All I could think about was how little I mattered to her. How easily she had tossed me aside for someone else. When she came home that night, I confronted her. I didn't yell, I didn't raise my voice, I simply asked her, "Is this what you wanted?" She stood frozen in place, her face paling. She didn't say anything at first. She just stared at me, her eyes wide, her mouth opening and closing, as if she were trying to find the right words. Finally, she spoke. "I didn't want this. I didn't mean for this to happen. I just wanted more. You're so predictable, so boring. I wanted excitement. I wanted something different." Her words cut deeper than any knife ever could. She called me boring, predictable. The man she had promised to love forever, the man who had been nothing but faithful, was now considered dull and uninteresting to her. She wanted more, and I wasn't enough. I stood there, stunned, as she tried to justify her actions. But I didn't need any more explanations. The truth was clear. She had found someone else, and now she was telling me that I wasn't good enough. That everything I had done for her, every moment, every sacrifice, every act of love, meant nothing. I didn't say anything else that night. I didn't need to. The words were already out in the open, and nothing could change them. The damage was done. I never expected her to leave. I never thought she would abandon me for another man, especially someone who already had a family. But she did. She moved out, and just like that, our life together ended. She told me she was going to be with him, that she was upgrading her life, that she needed to chase her dreams, and he was the key to it. She was choosing excitement over stability, and she couldn't wait for me to hold her back anymore. For weeks I didn't hear from her. I spent my time alone, trying to process everything. The pain was almost unbearable, but I kept it inside. I didn't cry, I didn't yell, I didn't ask why. I simply lived with it, numbing myself to the hurt. But slowly, something inside me began to change. I realized that I was done with her. Done with the lies, done with the betrayal, done with the woman who had taken everything I gave her and tossed it away without a second thought. I was no longer the man who had given her my heart without question. I was something else now, stronger, more aware, and far more capable of moving on. The weeks passed, and I quietly began to take control of my life again. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to make her suffer. But I knew I couldn't go back to her. So I did what I had to do. I erased her from my life, calmly, legally, and permanently. It wasn't about anger or hate. It was about moving forward, about making sure she could never come back. I didn't need her, not anymore. And when the time came for her to return, I would be ready. But she wouldn't find the man she had once left behind. No, that man was gone. And in his place, there would be someone who had learned to stand tall without her. The first few months after she left were the hardest. The silence was deafening, the emptiness of the house unbearable. I would sit in our living room, staring at the space we once shared, wondering if she ever thought of me, if she ever regretted her decision. But in truth, I had no time for self-pity. The reality of what had happened was clearer each day. I had been betrayed by the one person I trusted the most, and I wasn't about to allow that to define me. The moment she left, I had already begun to act. There was no grand confrontation, no dramatic showdown, no pleading or begging for her to come back. That wasn't me. I was quiet, controlled, the man I always was, only now I was learning how to protect myself from the very person who had once promised to stand by me. I had already consulted a lawyer, and I had started the necessary legal steps to protect my future. Our shared assets, our home, everything had to be sorted. I didn't want anything from her, no vengeance, no drama. I simply wanted to ensure that when she returned, if she returned, there was nothing left to reclaim. No part of me would ever be accessible to her again. I meticulously went through our finances, making sure everything was clear, everything was accounted for. Her name was slowly being erased from every document, every shared asset, every small corner of my life. I had seen enough to know that the person I had once loved no longer existed. She was replaced by someone who was willing to destroy everything we built for her own selfish desires. But that didn't mean I was angry. It didn't mean I hated her. I had grown beyond that. Anger was a weight, a burden I refused to carry. Instead, I focused on rebuilding myself, piece by piece, in a way that was even more intentional than before. Every day, I worked on healing, on growing, and on becoming a man who no longer needed to look back. As time passed, I began to enjoy my solitude. I took up new hobbies, things I had once neglected. I immersed myself in learning and creating, rediscovering the parts of myself that I had put on hold for her, things that had always brought me peace. I went back to writing, something I had always loved but had pushed aside for years. I went to the gym, working on my physical strength, just as I worked on my emotional resilience. I made new friends, people who supported me, who didn't ask me to be someone I wasn't. My life started filling with meaning again, not the kind that depended on anyone else's approval or validation, but the kind that came from within. It wasn't about moving on to another relationship or filling the void she left. It was about finding peace with who I was. I had always been content with simplicity, but now I had learned to embrace it as a source of strength. I was no longer the man who needed validation from the world. I was the man who knew his worth and would never again allow anyone to diminish it. And then, out of nowhere, she returned. It was a quiet evening when I received the message, her name flashing on my phone. The words she wrote were simple, but they were enough to make my heart beat a little faster. "Can we talk?" it said. "I made a mistake. I want to come back." For a moment I sat there staring at the screen, unsure of how to react. Part of me wanted to laugh, part of me wanted to scream, but the calmness I had worked so hard to build over these months kept me still. I had moved on. I had erased her from my life, and now she was asking for it all back. But I was no longer the same man who had been willing to forgive everything, to give in to the whims of her desires. That man was gone. I thought about it for a while. Should I respond? Should I let her back in? It felt almost surreal, the idea of her walking back into my life as if nothing had changed. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized that I had already moved on. I had already let go. What was left to talk about? I picked up the phone and typed my response. "I think it's too late for that." I didn't hear from her for a few days. But then she showed up at my door. I wasn't surprised. Deep down, I had expected it. She was standing there, nervous, unsure of how to begin. Her eyes, once full of excitement, now looked uncertain, even guilty. She had always been so confident, so sure of herself. But now she was a woman who had been humbled by her own choices. "I didn't think you'd be this cold," she said quietly. "I thought we could talk about it, work things out. I made a mistake." Her voice trailed off as she looked at me, waiting for some sign that I would welcome her back. But I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I simply looked at her. The woman who once meant everything to me was now standing there, the same way she had left, empty-handed, vulnerable, and desperate. "I can't give you what you want," I said calmly, my voice steady. "You made your choices and I made mine. We've both moved on, whether you realize it or not. I've erased you from my life, calmly, legally, and permanently. There's nothing left for you here." The words hit her like a slap. I could see the shock in her eyes as she tried to process what I was saying. You erased me." Her voice wavered. "Yes," I said, with a quiet finality that echoed in the air between us. "You made your choice and now I'm making mine." She stood there, speechless for a moment, as if trying to find a way back into the life she had left behind. But there was no way back. Not for her. Not for the woman who had betrayed me so easily, who had believed she could upgrade her life by discarding the man who had loved her unconditionally. I watched her for a few more seconds. But I didn't feel any anger, any bitterness. What I felt was peace. I had done what I needed to do. I had taken control of my life again, and I was no longer the man who would be manipulated, who would be the backup plan when things didn't work out. I had let go of the past, and I wasn't looking back. Without another word, I turned and walked away from the door, leaving her standing there. I didn't need to say anything else. She already knew. It was over. Days passed after that confrontation, and I remained as steady and calm as I had been throughout this entire ordeal. Her sudden reappearance had almost felt like a test, a final challenge to see whether I would revert back to the person I once was. But I had long since shed the skin of the man I used to be. I was no longer the man who would hold on to someone who had willingly walked away, and I was no longer the man who would look back. I focused on my work, my routines, and most importantly, myself. In those early days after she left, I had been caught in the storm of emotions, unsure of what the future held. But now, I had learned to embrace the clarity that only time and distance could bring. I was living for myself, no longer tied to the ghost of a life I once had. It wasn't long before the next twist came, as I knew it would. She reached out again, not with a plea for reconciliation, but with a legal notice. It was a document from her lawyer stating that she intended to contest the division of assets, claiming that I had acted too hastily and unfairly. She demanded that I reverse the steps I had taken to secure my life, and that we revisit everything, the house, the investments, the savings. She thought she could pressure me into giving her more, believing I had been too swift in my actions. She wanted to make sure she got what she thought she deserved, as if she had any right to claim what wasn't hers. I smiled as I read through the notice. It was almost laughable how little she understood the situation. She had underestimated me, just as she had done all those months ago when she chose someone else over me. But this time, there would be no back and forth. There would be no discussion. I had already prepared myself for every move she might make. It wasn't just about being legally correct, it was about being emotionally detached and in control. I called my lawyer immediately. "Prepare a counter-response," I said. "Make it clear that everything I did was within my rights and that there is no room for negotiation." I knew she had made a mistake, underestimating me again, thinking I was still the same man who would bend over backwards to please her. This time, there would be no last-minute changes, no emotional appeals that would sway me. I had been betrayed by the one person I had trusted the most, and now I would ensure she had no claim over what was rightfully mine. It wasn't about revenge or bitterness. It was simply about drawing the line and refusing to allow her to cross it. I had learned a hard lesson, but it had made me stronger. The woman who had left me for someone else, who had torn apart everything we had, could no longer expect to come back and pretend like nothing had happened. When the legal battle began, it was clear that her strategy was failing. She was trying to play the victim, the one who had been left behind and wronged, but it was impossible to deny the truth of her actions. The evidence was all there, the affair, the lies, the abandonment, and now she was trying to manipulate the system, hoping that I would give in and let her back into my life, even if only for financial gain. But I was smarter than that. I wasn't the man she had left behind. I wasn't the man who would let her walk all over him again. I had learned to protect myself, to defend my boundaries. Every move I made was deliberate, calculated. I played the game on my terms, using the legal system to my advantage. One afternoon, as the case dragged on, I received a call from her lawyer. It was an unexpected message, a settlement offer. They wanted to end the legal battle to avoid going to court. They knew they were losing, and they were hoping for a peaceful resolution. But there was no room for compromise in my heart. I had already made my decision. I picked up the phone and said, "Tell her it's over. There's no going back. I've erased her from my life. I've already moved on." The lawyer hesitated. "Mr. Your last name. I understand this is difficult, but a settlement is in your best interest. Perhaps there's still room to negotiate." "No," I interrupted, my voice firm. "Tell her to move on. There's nothing left for her here." I hung up, the finality of my words settling in my mind. I had done what I needed to do. I had played the hand I had been dealt, and I had played it well. There would be no more games. There would be no more manipulation. She could no longer dictate the course of my life. The next few weeks were quiet. I continued with my life, enjoying the peace I had fought so hard to find. The legal battles slowly died down, and the dust settled. Eventually, the case was closed. I had kept what was mine, and I had let go of everything that had once tied me to her. I never saw her again. She moved on with her life, and I moved on with mine. But I carried with me something that no one could ever take away: my strength, my resilience, and my ability to walk away from something that no longer served me. I had learned that the best revenge isn't a loud, dramatic act. It's quiet, it's strategic, and it's about reclaiming your own life without looking back. I wasn't angry anymore. I didn't need to be. The satisfaction I felt wasn't in the defeat of her, but in my own transformation. I had gone from the man she had left behind to the man who had risen stronger, wiser, and more aware of his own worth. I didn't need her approval, her affection, or her validation. I had found something far more valuable: my own peace. And as for her, well, I knew she would never truly understand what I had become. She would always remember me as the man she thought she could discard. But I knew better now. I wasn't the man she left behind. I was the man who had learned to stand tall in the face of betrayal and walk away, leaving the past where it belonged, behind me. And so life moved on.